Namaskar, welcome to another episode of the Inked Happiness, and it is a pleasure to be talking to you to try to address the issues that you raise. And what I have been trying to do for the last couple of days is, instead of thopoing on you pens that I like, I try to mold these stories based on your feedback, trying to answer the questions that you raise. Now, one question that I keep getting, and so many of you have raised this question, is about nibs. This particular topic has come into sharp focus after I did the story on how to grip a pen, which was liked by many of you, because if I understand it right, there are many new people who are coming into the world of fountain pens, who are taking up fountain pens as a hobby, who are writing more and more with fountain pens, who are using fountain pens. And of course, you had your questions, basic questions. Now, the mistake that I was doing so far was to approach these stories from our perspective, because I have been using fountain pens all my life, and for the last 30 years or more I have been collecting fountain pens, so I am used to fountain pens. Most of the people who are in my circle, who are my friends, who are my acquaintances, are also fountain pen users. So when I was talking about fountain pens, I had them in my mind, which today I understand was a wrong thing to do, because so many of you are new users. You are new into this fascinating world of fountain pens, and obviously you have questions that we were taking for granted. So some of these questions are relating to nibs. As a matter of fact, most of your questions are relating to nibs. What kind of a nib should I use? I'm buying my fountain pen for the first time. What kind of a nib should it have? What kind of nib will give me writing pleasure? What kind of a nib is used for calligraphy? What kind of nib I should use if I want to make my letters flowing and with a lot of flourish and things like that. So what I will be doing is talking about nibs from a very basic point of view, from a very standard level, and I will try to answer your questions and debunk a couple of myths, as it were. So without much ado, without beating around the bush, let's talk about the nib. But say, for example, the pen that I am carrying now, the pen that is there in my pocket, and another thing that somebody was asking me the other day, and I want to answer this question once and for all, is that no, I don't put pens in my pockets just because I want to address a particular issue in a particular video. These pens are randomly picked. They're generally, I keep changing my pens, I keep re-inking my pens so that they rotate. I have an unhealthy number of pens. I'm sorry, I apologize, but I have to keep them in good shape, so I keep rotating them. And the pen that incidentally I have today in my pocket is a Kaweco All Sport, and this incidentally has a medium nib. So we will be talking about this nib. Incidentally, this is a very interesting pen. A, it looks beautiful, as you can see. B, it is a strange design in the sense that it is slightly on the smaller size, so it fits into the pocket very easily. It's is good to grip as a pen. It's light, the grip is good, and when posted it becomes slightly bigger, and for those who prefer weight on the back of the pen, at the bottom end of the pen, because this gives you greater the weight is distributed in such a way that the ink flows easily. Some people like to write with their pens posted. I don't, but this is an interesting pen. But what I want to say, and there is another question, sorry, before we get into this pen in details, there is another question. Many of you have asked me to do another story about the Click Aristocrat pen. These are the pens. See, if you will notice, these two are Click Aristocrats. These two are Pilot parallel pens, and this of course is a Kanwrite pen with a flex nib, and this is the 6th pen. So these pens I have been using. Of course, I have also been using this pencil a lot, so this is what I normally, and I write a lot. I write for a living, and I have to write a lot, and sometimes not only am I writing for earning my bread, for earning my living, I also write because I write as a catharsis. When I have some free time, when I am thinking something else, and I just want to scribble and play with words or with pens, so I use a lot of pens. Now, to get back to the Click, these two are the Click pens that I have been using, and one is white, the other is black. Both are Aristocrats, as you can see, and both have steel nibs. Now this is a flex nib, and this is a standard medium nib which I used to write with. Let's change the caps anyway. So this is like ebony and ivory, and living together in perfect harmony. This is so what I wanted to say is that if you are buying a pen just to write with, then this is a very good pen. This is a very good pen, and the nib is very good. Try and buy a medium nib. Now, why a medium nib? If you are a beginner, if you are beginning for the first time, try a medium nib. Why a medium nib? Because you will see that the pen writes, the nib writes through this tip, which is at the tip of the nib. Now these may be a steel nib, but the tip is of a different material. Let us not get into the details about what material it is, but it is the tip that touches the surface of the paper. It is the tip through which the ink is finally delivered onto the paper. So the tip plays a very important role in your writing. Now, when you have a medium nib, it means the size of the tip when compared to a fine nib is bigger, or when compared to a bold nib is smaller. So this is the average mean kind of a tip that you are using. Now what does it mean? It means that the flow of ink into the paper is more than that of a fine nib, number one. Number two, since you have more surface area of the nib or of the tip on the surface of the paper, so you have more more of the pen touching the paper. So this gives you a bolder line, a thicker line. That's number two. If you have a thicker line with more ink flowing into the paper, normally it would mean that your writing pleasure, the softness of the nib touching the paper, would be more than that of a fine nib. Now, if that is the case, then naturally the pleasure of writing is more, number one. Number two, if the pleasure of writing is more and if your lines are thicker, if there is more ink flowing into the paper, on the positive side, your writing becomes better to look at, your writing becomes more easier. But on the flip side, if the paper is not good, this will lead to, the probability of this leading to ghosting, of ink spreading, is more. Now you can of course eliminate that by using a fountain pen friendly paper, using better quality paper. So what I was saying is, if you are using a medium nib, so it gives you more pleasure to write with, your lines are thicker, and of course it is, if you are writing for long periods of time, if the pen is of a standard quality, like this is a very standard pen which is not very heavy, but at the same time the grip is good, and it's since it's not very heavy, it's easier to write with. So if you are writing for a long period of time, this kind of pens with a medium nib is perfect. Now the question is, why do in that case people use finer nibs? Now the answer simply is that, for me, I prefer thin lines. I don't prefer that the heavier or thicker lines of the medium nibs. So I prefer writing with finer nibs, and this is a very personal choice. There is no hard and fast rule that you have to use a thick nib. You can always use a fine nib. Now the point with a fine nib is that, since as we were talking, since you have less area of tipping on the paper, touching the surface of the paper, the lines are thinner. There is less amount of ink coming to the paper, and it's less smooth to put things in a particular way. Now, if that happens, naturally the finer nib gives a kind of a feedback, kind of as a rough edge to your writing experience, which many people like, which many people love. They find these medium or broad nibs to be too soft, too buttery, and they feel that they are not getting to enjoy the pleasure of the pen scratching or the nib scratching on the paper. They cannot hear that sound, that particular sound when a nib writes on paper. So they prefer a thin nib. On the other extreme, there are people who prefer a broad nib. A broad nib has even more tipping and even more area on the surface of the paper, which comes up with even thicker lines. And when these lines become thicker and the pen has more place to write on, so that's another kind of a pleasure. But for most people, if you are writing, but then again, since most of you will not be writing all the time, it makes sense to stick to the middle path and take a medium nib. But you can always, as you graduate, as your gripping of the pen, as your experience of writing with a pen, as you become more and more attuned to the feel of a pen, as you can always change your nibs. You can always go for either thinner nibs, or you can go for thicker nibs, which are broad, extra broad, and BB and stuff like that. Now, what I was doing yesterday, I was writing certain things on my, I don't think if you can see this, but I was writing certain things. Let me see, I don't know whether it was there in this paper or where did I write. So let me, here, I'll show you examples. See, this is with this pen, this the red writings, and let's see. So what you can do is you can change the line width, because this is a parallel cut nib, or this is actually a BB nib, so which is more than bold, and the green of course is this pen. I'll show you writing samples here also. See, so this also is a BB nib. So you can have line variations, you can have two kinds of lines, and you can do a whole lot of things with these pens. And these are primarily for calligraphers, for people who want to write beautiful things. You want to write a particular card or something, so you use those pens. But these are normal pens, the general pens, the medium pens that we write about. So this is it. Look at this. This is it. And so the point is, what is the takeaway? The takeaway is simple. If you are new here, if you want to buy a pen for the first time, and if you want to write, then buy a medium nib. Now, a couple of more things about nibs. Number one, when you buy a pen, when you are buying a pen for the first time, don't go for the brand name. There is nothing like, it's like you are buying your first car. So a Maruti car will do. You don't have to buy a Rolls Royce or a Lamborghini or whatever, because it's about going from point A to point B, and a Maruti will take you there. Similarly, if you are about writing, if you are buying a pen for writing, buy a standard pen, buy a Click Aristocrat, which is a kind of an entry-level pen which writes beautifully, and which, I forgot to show you, most of the writing here in this paper, this is Click. I don't know which one it was, because let me show you. See, they write wet, they write beautifully, and they write with a fairly standard kind of a line that will serve your purpose. So and it's very pleasurable to write with. Now, sorry for the interruption. Going back to what pen you should buy a standard pen, because most manufacturers today don't make their own nibs, and most of the pens that you'll find in the mid segment overwhelmingly have the Jowo or the Bock or these imported nibs, which are standardized, or even Kanwrite nibs. Kanwrite nibs are also very good, but we'll talk about, and we have talked about Kanwrite nibs separately. But so these are standard nibs, so it makes no sense for you to spend a lot of money to buy a branded pen which has a standard nib. I mean, you can buy a much lower price if you are just buying it for the nib. It makes sense just to buy the nib and have it fitted on a standard pen. Now that's number one. Number two, and this is very important, and many people have asked me this also, is that vintage pens, when most of the European and Japanese, and I mean they still do, most of them, used to make their own nibs, those nibs had characters of their own. Like I was saying, in the past, most vintage pens, most fountain pen makers, which have become vintage or even antique these days, they had nibs that were exclusively made, and these nibs generally had very strong characters, strong personalities. Now, which is one of the reasons why so many people buy vintage or antique pens, because they want to acquaint themselves with these old nibs, the nibs from the past, and since they have been aged, they're weather beaten, they have been exposed to the elements, they have been used so much for so long that they have all developed soft spots and particular areas where part of it has worn out. So these nibs give you a different kind of experience while writing. Now that's very difficult for a standard steel nib to replicate, that too in the short term, after 2 days of writing. It's not possible. So don't expect that kind of character in today's pens or in today's nibs. If you are expecting that, you were wrong. You will be disappointed, because the nib will not be able to give you what you want, what you are wanting, because what you are wanting in the first place is like an impossibility. Anyway, so the point is, most of today's pens have standardized pens which are like a pair of unbranded blue denim jeans. They all look the same. Some may have a flare, some may have more faded or sand washed look, but they are overwhelmingly the same. So the thing is, buy your nib. But and there is another thing. Before buying a pen, I will always suggest to all of you is, please ink it up, write with it, write a few lines and see if you like it or not. If you don't like, because nibs are different, and different nibs have different hardness even within these nibs. This may be a steel nib, this may be a generic nib, but a click nib will be different from a lotus nib or an asa nib or any other nib for that matter, because of different reasons, and because of the feed, because of the flow, and because the way this particular nib has been tuned. Since these are mass produced pens, they all adhere to certain basic standards, and one standard of a particular company or a particular class of pens, or even within a class, from pen to pen, there may be a very slight difference, which is very difficult to either comprehend or even more difficult to explain or to pinpoint in a short duration video like this. So what I suggest is you try the pen, you write with it, you satisfy yourself, because there's no point in buying a pen and then getting emotional about the entire thing, not checking it out before you buy, and then complaining in the social media and asking for the manufacturer to be hanged. That's not fair. Let's not get into it. It's waste of time, and let's not get into it. You can just overcome it by trying the pen, and if you don't like it, don't damn buy it. So buy something else, whatever you like. So, but once you buy it, try not to crib about it, because of caveat emptor, because buyers, you should beware, and the onus is on you to see whether you like something or not before you buy it, and B, because it makes no sense and we are wasting everybody's time. So the thing is, nibs are different. Nibs have their own characters. Nibs tend to grow and evolve in your hand. Maybe gold nibs more so than steel nibs, but still they evolve, and they are there with you for life. They are here. This pen looks so beautiful, it looks almost new, but you won't believe, like all these other pens, this too is very old. I've been using it for a long time. I've been using all these pens for a long time, and see, most of them even have their stickers, though the stickers have kind of worn out, but they're still there. They're still there. So the thing is, you have to love your pens. If you don't love your pens, if you don't love your nibs, I mean, what's the point? We are here, this is a kind of a hobby, and this is, something that we all do it for the sheer pleasure of it. So enjoy it. Enjoy your pen, enjoy your nib, enjoy writing, enjoy the act of, being alone with your thoughts and transferring these thoughts onto paper. And it's the nib that does it, because it's the nib and the pen, that's your conduit, that's something that helps you to ensure that your thoughts are crystallized on paper, that your thoughts are saved forever. So I hope you like what I said, and I hope that your fountain pen journey becomes as exciting. All my pens and the nibs join me in requesting you that you take them at their face value and give them the love and affection that they deserve. Thank you.